The light transmission from spirit this evening is called a narrow path. And this narrow path is something that we are collectively creating, that we are actually bringing these highly polarized energies into integration. So we've talked about this bifurcation of worlds since this revisioning process for humanity of 2020, where we've kind of moved into these very polarized places, which of course on the human level, leads to a lot of finger pointing and blaming and not a lot of taking responsibility for oneself. It's not the most comfortable place to live, but we had to move into this bifurcation so that we could experience these highly polarized energies, so that we could balance and integrate them and create a middle way, or this narrow path, and what spirit speaks to as the trifurcation of worlds. So this is moving into the frequency of the Trinity, which is the frequency that our soul blueprint can finally anchor and ground into. So we are going to speak today about some of the supporting energies that are going to allow us to really create and then ground into this narrow path. And what that means for many of us who have been on what feels like a narrow path for some time is that our energy from our soul interior and from the spiritual realms is now merging with the material, with the physical realm. So if you have been someone who has had to bifurcate your life in some ways, where you have a spiritual life and you have, the life where you go to work and you do your thing, we may start to find now that there is a middle way established where we get to bring all of ourselves together into one space. And some of the supporting energies that Spirit has highlighted here is being authentic, being true to ourselves, and also tuning into these peaks of joy as we begin to move through some of these heavier feelings, this confrontation of the shadow December, as Spirit called it on last week's call. Moving through some of these heavier emotions of forgiveness. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later in the call, as well as focusing on the energies of giving rather than taking. And of course, if you celebrate the holidays that are happening right now, this kind of puts you into that spirit. And finally, we're also encouraged to step out into the flow. And that is an energy that has been coming up over and over and over again, that we do not have the control from our mind's perspective anymore. And so we really need to trust ourselves and begin to step into the flow.